How you doing, everybody? I want to wish everybody out there a happy Memorial Day, and to anybody who was in the armed forces, thank you for your service. You know, I always feel awkward whenever I say that, because I just don't really feel like that says enough to thank people who served in the military for what they went through, especially combat veterans. Thank you for your service just doesn't feel enough. In honor of the holiday, I'm wearing my Intrepid hat here. Is this on? My son was in Cub Scouts, so we slept on the USS Intrepid, and we also slept on the battleship Massachusetts. I spent the last few days, getting things planted in the garden. I've got all the plants I purchased in the ground, and just kind of do just a regular what's going on, share some ideas, get some feedback from you folks, and just increase everybody's knowledge. So let's get to it. Today we're gonna play Name That Motorcycle. So based on the sound, can you name that motorcycle? This is the Baptisia sphaerocarpa, which is in full bloom. And I mean, this is just gorgeous. It's gorgeous. This would do best in full sun, hot, dry. I think I mentioned that the roots on this guy are extremely aggressive. So, I mean, once it gets established, it can be a real bear to dig out and also to divide. But right now, this is probably about 24 to 30 inches tall and just covered in these beautiful yellow blooms. And I want to just take you around back real quick and show you Baptisia australis, which is just coming into bloom. Now, I will admit that this one is growing in a fairly shady spot, and I'm not really sure how much light Baptisia australis wants, but I'm going to assume more. But this Baptisia australis is easily, I'm going to call this 30 to 36 inches tall. And you'll notice how the flowers here, this one's a little bit better. The flowers here, they're stretching a little bit farther, and they're starting a little bit farther into the foliage. So I really do like that other Baptisia more, which is Baptisia sphaerocarpa. I don't see it in the trade very often. I was kind of hard on the Baptisia, last video. There's nothing wrong with this. I mean, it's kind of like a shrub with cool purple flowers, a 3 to 4 foot shrub basically is how I would treat this. I just really like that other one for those bright yellow flowers, compact habit, and it just looks like you could put it almost in like dry full sun and it would thrive. All right, and then we're back over here again, and I just wanted to show you too that the pileated woodpecker has been coming over here and digging for bugs in this stump. So I was out a couple days ago and I caught him over here, but a pileated woodpecker, it's like a foot tall, 12 to 15 inches tall. I have a video I'll put here if I can find it. But this is something that it's taken me longer than it should have for me to realize. We need to leave rotted trees in the landscape or rotted logs because, there's all these different ecosystems or food webs or whatever going on. So this woodpecker literally comes, I just see him in the spring, and wherever I have some old rotted wood, he'll come and just tear into it, looking for bugs or worms or whatever. And I admit that when I was younger, I would, try to clean out dead wood, whereas now I'm realizing that it's actually better to leave I'm not saying to leave dangerous dead trees in a landscape, but if you have a tree taken down, maybe have it cut 4 to 8 feet above the landscape and let it just rot so the woodpeckers have somewhere to eat. And then over the weekend, I did transplant. This is my Stokes Aster from the backyard here. And then this is my Mountain Bluet from the backyard as well. And the Mountain Bluet, I did cut the flowers off because I didn't want it to be too stressed out from the transplant, but I've been working on identifying the difference. And the Mountain Bluet over there, it's going to have a much looser habit. It's going to have a little bit of a fuzz to the foliage. It's going to bloom a little bit earlier. That's going to be coming into bloom if I didn't cut the flowers off, you know, probably like in June. Whereas the Stokes Aster here has that longer foliage. It's got more of the basal foliage. And there's also, it doesn't have the fuzziness to it. And it blooms a little bit later over the summer in the year. You know, not really a huge difference with either of these, but just sometimes I fumble over which is which. And honestly, I'll fumble again because I don't use either of them very often. And then over here, I did get the fleabane in. It looks like I could use a little bit of water. I got a chance to weed over here with my Allium glaucum. This is Woods Aster, Aster divaricatus, fall bloomer. Pollinators love it, but it's a ground cover iris. It's going to spread, and I'm curious to see how that ends up. But I've got a little bit of maintenance now because since I put everything in, you know, I do need to keep it well watered for a while. So I've just given myself another half hour to 45 minutes of watering until this stuff gets established. I did just want to take a moment and ask anybody if they recognize this plant. When I was weeding this bed literally last year, there were these small tufts growing, and I picked them up and transplanted them and put them over here. And every time I found one, I'd move them. But these were all just like maybe 3 inches tall last spring when I saw them. And they've all grown into this. And they've got these really cool blue flowers. And they're just pretty much like a grass. I wonder if it's like a sedge, like a carex maybe. But I don't know this plant, so if anybody recognizes this, please let me know. But the really cool thing about this is we're underneath sugar maples here, so I'm in dry shade, and this plant absolutely loves it. And I know you could plant like a liriope in dry shade, you could do vinca, you could do pachysandra, but I mean, this looks like a pretty cool native, which I'm not really sure why we haven't been using in the dry shade. And then I did get out and go ahead and cut off the leaves on the elephant ears that were weeping, and they're going to come back, but I really do need to cut these back. I've got some flowers coming. Well, there's a flower right there, so there's an elephant ear flower for you. It just comes out of the middle just like a regular stalk, but it's a flower, and once that dies, it'll just keep going. Somewhere another stalk will develop. But I've noticed if one of them gets flowers, usually they all do. So I've got another flower coming over here, and I haven't really looked at this one too hard. Yep. So here's another flower. I didn't even notice this one. It was so hidden. So there's another flower for you. And these leaves are all tangled up. But I've been giving these like one watering can for the 3 of them a day, keeping them moist. I did give them one good shot of fertilizer, and you know, they're going to be fine. But I really do need to divide them, and then and replant the smaller ones. And then when the smaller ones start getting new growth, like new side shoots, plant those little side shoots to get them back down to something small. And then this plant here, which I can't think of the name, when I'm on the spot, I just don't do well. But this plant here, I cut back in the fall before I brought it in the house, and I really did expect it to start getting some growth. There's a little bit of green here. Maybe that's going to turn into something. I really did expect it to start growing into something, but it hasn't. And that, as I was working the yard this weekend, I was thinking how, I don't really like to give people plants as gifts, because when you give someone a plant, they have to, take care of it. And if you take care of a plant, they pretty much never die, and you're creating a lot of work for people. So I was really on the verge of just grabbing this guy and throwing it on a compost pile. And I mentioned that to my wife this morning, and she said that she got this plant as a gift like almost 25 years ago, and I guess I hadn't even realized I've been taking care of it for that long. Now I feel kind of bad because if this thing doesn't throw some new growth, I killed it. I don't, like, I like giving people bunches of flowers as gifts, but I'm not really a huge fan of just going to the grocery store and buying a plant because, you know, we've been, my wife got it as a gift years ago, or got it years ago, and it's been 25 years now. As long as we're over here, we'll go through this garden too. And what I ended up doing in this garden is, you can see I transplanted a bunch of the milkweed, which I guess I didn't do too well. What I need to do is come back and just leave it to one set of true leaves. But what I noticed was milkweed has like one root growing underground, and then all these other milkweed sprout from it. So you just kind of take your shovel, dig it in the ground, and pop the milkweed up, and then try to get as much of that root as possible, and preferably earlier in the year than I did it. And you can transplant them. But when you transplant them, you should really nip them down to just one set of leaves. Hopefully these milkweed will come back, but if they don't come back, that's okay, because the ones that aren't wilty are the ones that were here anyways. But I just got so tired of this mess of this bed that I did bring them all over to this corner, and there was some other weed in here. I didn't know what it was. I got rid of that. So I really cleaned up this bed quite a bit, and the poppies are just coming into bloom. Got one right there. Got a little bit more of that Baptisia sphaerocarpa, which maybe it's a little shadier here. I mean, this one's not even in bloom yet. But I moved a whole bunch of stuff around in this garden, and I'll have to find the name. I bought this plant. There was only one left at a plant sale for natives, and I'm not sure if it's a native around here. But this is just a gorgeous plant, really easy to grow. It comes back every year. And hopefully I can start propagating it pretty soon as well. And the rest of this bed is just a smattering of perennials. I've got the Biokovo geranium there, which is into bloom. I believe we decided this was a Cardona salvia because it has the purple stems. Last time we were here, I'd love to get some more of that. I really like the look of that. And then this is a Humolo, lamb's ears, stackies, and I did transplant these 3 daylilies, which were somewhere over there. I just moved them over here. I'm not really sure why I transplanted these daylilies over to there, but I've got this kind of area with all these tulips, so maybe I'm thinking I'm going to put some kind of a ground cover in there. I don't know. We'll have to see what I end up coming up with on this one. This is a Helleborus, which I got at White Flower Farm. I think it was the only one they had left. And I really like the look of that one. In this bed over here at the property line, this is a viburnum named Cardinal Candy. And I only have one. I don't really know why, but I want to go get some more because this has been here now for about 2 years. And we're in dry shade, and not only is it a nice green, healthy looking viburnum, but it's also got flowers coming on it. So I'd love to do like at least 2 more in front here, but maybe more because it seems like it's a pretty bulletproof viburnum. And then I've got the Leatherleaf Viburnum back here, which we've talked about other times. And then this is Viburnum bodrantense, Pink Dawn. I just stuck these in. You can still see where I gave them some water. And I'm not sure how these are going to do. You know, again, this is dry shade. So over here, I'm not really looking for plants that are going to thrive. I just want to find stuff that's going to survive. But it would be cool if these viburnums could get to be like 10 to 15 feet tall eventually, just be covered in pink flowers in the spring, and then, you know, kind of blend in the background just to give me that backdrop. And then I did get in, this is Corylopsis spicata, and You know, we'll see how it does. Everything on this part of the yard, it's shade, it's dry. It might not be dry now, but by midsummer it's going to be dry. So we'll see how it does. But Coralopsis, it grows more out than it does up. So we'll see how it does. But this has very early spring blooms. So this is another one that I was at the nursery really early in the year, saw it in bloom, also, you know, knew it was something I didn't grow much of. So I thought I'd give it a try over here. And this is Viburnum. It's a very large viburnum, and I can't think of the name of it. It's been kind of lingering for a while. While we got you over here, I do just want to kind of point out, what is this? 3 leaves, and you see it's got 3 leaves and some blooms there. And then always growing nearby with 3 leaves, you have a plant with 5 leaves. Not always, but quite often if you see a plant with 5 leaves, you will see the 3 leaves growing nearby. This is poison ivy, and then this is Virginia creeper. But one thing I learned when I was making a video last fall is if you see poison ivy in the winter, it's going to have these kind of roots growing on the stems, whereas your Virginia creeper doesn't really have the same roots. The poison ivy has like hairy stems, whereas the stem on this Virginia creeper is much cleaner. But when in doubt, don't touch either. That's what we're going to go by. And then down here, this is actually an Aesculus. It's a horse chestnut, and I think it's Aesculus parviflora, but I'll double check. But it's just starting to get its blooms, and it looks like they're actually drying out already. This guy has probably been here for 5 years and probably was about maybe a 3 or 5 gallon when I put it in. It's probably not the ideal spot for it, but hopefully little by little it'll keep getting bigger and keep spreading. And then this is a cornus that I transplanted, and it's kind of reaching for light. I want to just cut it back and make it into a shrub, and I may do that at some point. I created a video about how to make a ring, you know, how to draw a ring around a tree. So hopefully that was up before this video. We'll see what happens. But just, you know, be on the lookout for it. And, you know, once you've got the circle around the tree, then you can very carefully remove the grass without damaging the tree. But I just wanted to let you know that there's a video coming. So I've got one ring over here I made, and then there's one ring over here. And to just have a neat ring around a tree makes your landscape look neater, but it also prevents people from banging weed whackers into trees. The number one thing that bothers me on landscapes is people who use too much mulch or volcano mulch the whole landscape around trees. But the number 2 thing is when people bump their weed whackers into trees, fences, I mean trees for the most part. Weed whackers should be kept away from everything but grass, and unfortunately, trying to be as productive as possible, quite often they're not. So it's always better to have a nice ring around a tree, whether you mulch it, don't mulch it, or put a ground cover, just create some kind of a ring around a tree to prevent weed whackers from whacking into them. And then we're back over here, and this looks like the last bloom. This is Carya japonica. You see that little flower? So it's a May bloomer here in zone 6. But what I'm gonna do when this Carya finishes blooming, which is basically when I have time in the next couple weeks, is just come out, and I've already cut these back in early spring because I wanted them back, but all these older stems, I'm just gonna cut them back to the ground, let them regrow, and then by next year, they should be big enough where they'll go ahead and bloom again. The secret to pruning is you wanna prune right after flowering, you know, big picture. So the Carya just finished blooming. You really can't get fancy trying to prune it halfway or something. So I'm just gonna go ahead and take it down to the ground, except where I've already pruned it earlier, and let it regrow. And then this bed over here, I'm really liking the way things are things are finally kind of filling in. I think I've mentioned in other videos that when we first bought this house, this was just like grass with some moss growing on it, and it was just like this lost place. I spread some compost, then I got these stones and I made this nice curvy path, and then little by little I've been trying to fill it in. And I've finally gotten things, you know, at least filled in, so now I can keep doing more tweaking. I had some penstemon over here in pots, and I went ahead and put them in the ground, and so I'm happy about that. I thought the raven was looking for some food there. I've been pretty impressed with the way that this penstemon has been growing, and so I got some more to fill in some holes on this side. And this is lobelia, and I had lobelia growing over here, but it never seemed to take. So hopefully the penstemon's gonna take. But one thing I've noticed, and again, this is dry shade. Once summer comes, it's bone dry out here. But the penstemon, it's filling in nicely, but I mean, these have been here for like a couple years now, and they really don't have many flowers at all. I mean, there's one back here that actually has no flowers, and I have to wonder if that's because there's just not enough light for it back here. I mean, it's still doing a nice job of being a ground cover, but the ones I bought at the nursery are just covered in flower because they were growing in full sun and ideal water and nutrients. So I don't want to say, you know, don't plant penstemon in full shade and drought, but I'm pretty sure this isn't the ideal conditions for penstemon. And notice how, you know, I have the cardinal flower over here, the lobelia, and I just put one over here because I like to not be totally random. Like, I like to do things in groupings, which I did on this side, but then I always like to have one kind of getting away from the grouping. It looks a lot more natural. And then this hosta, I'll find the name of, but I want to get a few more. I really like the color on the hosta here, and I just want to get like 4 or 5 more and fill in this path in the middle, finish this bed off, and then all the hosta in here that you're seeing are pretty much just stuff that's come back with me on jobs just to fill the bed in. I did get this little, it's a scented viburnum, I don't remember which one, but it's a dwarf viburnum. I got this guy in yesterday as well. So this is Tiarella cordifolia, which I've talked about before. It really wants to have a little bit more moisture than it's got here. I mean, it does great in the spring, but once the summer drought comes, it just kind of disappears. So at some point I may try planting something else, but the one cool thing that this Tiarella did all by itself is it self-sowed all the way across the path. So you see right there, that's a Tiarella, there's one there. I would not have planted this one here, and it just gives it that really natural look. Working our way through the bed, you know, I've got these blue and yellow hosta, which are cool, but they're really not as big and aggressive as the blue ones over there. So what I'm going to end up doing is digging out the blue and yellow in this part of the garden. I'll thicken over here, and then I'll get some, you know, some more aggressive, larger blues and put them out here. And then speaking of hosta, I do just want to show you this bed over here. I'm not a huge fan of hosta, but if you have dry shade, sometimes it's the only option. If you have deer, it's most likely not the option, but we've been really losing our deer population. So I will put the cultivar down here, but I mean, these are monsters. These are probably, I mean, there's my hand on a leaf. These are probably about 3 to 4 feet in diameter, the plants, and they're just gonna keep getting bigger. And it just does a really nice job of just kind of filling in around here, and I just wasn't really sure what to do. And at some point there's a Japanese holly that I transplanted from a customer's house. You know, I need to get that out of there, and then, you know, figure out what else I could plant over here, you know, to create some interest. And then I planted these last year. This is Aronia, and the birds are supposed to like the berries here. I'll put the cultivar, but it looks like we actually did get some some berries. I wonder if I should put some more in here. It's kind of sparse. Eventually they'll fill in quite a bit. And then this is Ilex opaca, which is a native holly, which can do pretty well in the shade. You're seeing yellow leaves now, which always makes me nervous. But the reason the leaves are yellow now is because it's losing last year's leaves and getting this year's leaves. So we've got new growth here, and these are actually going to be flowers. But if you have a deep shade situation and you want a screening plant, consider Ilex opaca. But it's not a fast grower, and I can't say it's super dense. But again, I'm just trying to create that backdrop here. And the birds, looks like that was a robin that just flew away. So, there's baby robins. You guys seeing the baby robins in there? Yeah, so there's a baby robin, so we'll get away. We'll get away here.